It's waiver wire day. That's why it's producer Pete, backup producer Pete, second string producer Pete. Yeah. Behind the ones and twos today. So let's get right into it and start with the wide receivers.
Yes. If you will.
It's technically Taylor Heineke.
Taylor Heineke, that's fine.
Yeah. I thought it was going to be Easton Stick.
Sorry, Pete. The Taylor Heineke of the fantasy football happy hour. Yeah.
Or, hey, maybe the Jauan Jennings?
Jauan Jennings.
No, it's optimistic.
No.
Jauan Jennings is really
trying
good.
to give him a little credit here.
Yeah.
Wow. I tried, Pete. I'm sorry.
The Case Keenum.
The Ronnie Bell?
No, not the Ronnie Bell. We like
Pastor
Pete a little bit more than that.
Yeah, the Pastronaut.
Yeah.
Jauan Jennings, once thought of as a backup wide receiver, now a household name in fantasy after an absolute nuclear week. Available in 68% of leagues. He's got the Patriots. This is coming off a week that, listen, no Deebo Samuel, no Christian McCaffrey. 12 targets. He catches 11 of them for 175 yards and 3 touchdowns, Matthew.
And by the way, this is something that look, I'm not sitting here trying to claim that we thought 175 and 3 touchdowns, but we talked about him last week. We talked about him on this show last week. We talked about him on Fantasy Football pregame as well. That this is somebody that when he has gotten a shot has produced, like he produced in the Super Bowl last year. He is somebody that they like in San Francisco. It was one of the reasons why we were on draft day, Connor. We were surprised that they took Ricky Pearsall because we're like, they like Jauan Jennings, we think Jauan Jennings has some talent here. He's obviously getting an opportunity with Deebo Samuel out. 40% target share last week. He leads all players in the NFL with 13.1 yards per target. They're home to the Patriots in a game they must win. They're 1-2, and so I don't think you're going to see 46.5 fantasy points, but Jauan Jennings should not be 68% available in leagues. He's the number one pickup this week, I think, because as long as Deebo Samuel is out, he's going to have value. Kittle out as well. And honestly, I think this performance earns him more playing time, whether it's enough playing time with Ayuk and Deebo active, if it's enough to be a fantasy relevant role, but somebody that needs to be on rosters in every single league.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll get a lot of questions about Jauan Jennings or ex-player on Fantasy Football pregame on Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern on Peacock. But I think you'll be starting Jauan Jennings over Stephon Diggs, players of that ilk. I think a wide receiver.
That's a conversation.
Yeah.
It's a legit question.
Yeah.
Niners favored by 10 points in this game, by the way. And I feel like especially when you're thinking about how much fab to spend with Jennings, the combo is always Deebo's hurt, Kittle's hurt, McCaffrey's hurt. They're hurt every year at this point. Yeah. So Jennings is someone, I'm not going to say spend all of your fab on him if he's available in your league, but it feels like the role is somewhat sustainable for at least the next month.
One of the things we talked about in the preseason, and we talked about it, I did this Football Night in America podcast as well, and one of the things we talked about with Deb McCourty and Coach Garrett and Maria Taylor and Mike Florio, we talked about is that the 49ers, in the preseason we did who can repeat and that kind of stuff. One of the things we talked about on that show, and I think we've talked about it here as well, is last year the 49ers got really lucky health-wise. Obviously not in the Super Bowl, but generally speaking, throughout the year they got very healthy. They didn't suffer major injuries, and it's one of the older teams in the NFL just on a pure roster basis. And so that was the question: is can this older NFL team stay healthy for a second year in a row? And so far, that just hasn't been the case between McCaffrey and Kittle and Deebo, and then the contract situation with Ayuk, and it's been a tough situation so far for San Fran.
And their defense dealing with a lot of injuries as well,
which
means they might need to throw more. All right, next up here, Packers wide receiver.
Purdy looks good, at least.
Purdy looks awesome.
Purdy looks great.
Purdy looks awesome. Packers wide receiver Romeo Doubs against the Vikings, available in 57% of leagues. And listen, we know the deal with Doubs here, Jay. When Jordan Love plays, he's an effective player. Malik Willis has been really good, but it's obviously hurt the production of Doubs. Jordan Love expect to be back in practice this week.
Yeah, definitely. They're passing. They're going to pass the ball 3 times more than they have under Malik Willis, where it's been a heavy running offense. The expectation, I think at least the market's expectation, is that Jordan Love will come back. It seemed like he was relatively close to playing last week. He has that rapport with Dobbs. Now we're back to playing the kind of Green Bay wide receiver lottery between those 4 guys, but Dobbs, he has as much chance to produce as any of them. You still probably have him behind Jaden Reed, but outside of that, I mean, Romeo Doubs, very perennially underrated. He was number 1 on the targets on the team last year.
Yeah, by the way, and in the one game that Jordan Love played this year, he had a 22% target share. Obviously, very small sample size, but to your point, he's also a guy that gets a lot of looks in the end zone and in the red zone. 6th most end zone targets last year. He was tied for 6th. So Romeo Doubs is somebody that Jordan Love looks for when they get in close as well. He's out there in 57% of leagues. They play the Vikings at home in a really That's a fun game this week. That's suddenly a very interesting game.
How about Darnell Mooney, Matthew, with the Falcons right now? A guy that has a high target share with Kirk Cousins. He's coming off a week where he had 8 targets, caught all 8 of them for 66 yards against the Chiefs. He's got the Saints this week.
Playing 99% of the snaps. He's got a 99% route participation this year. He's got a 29% target share over the last 2 weeks, to your point, Connor. He's had at least 14 fantasy points in each of those games. Tough game against the Saints, but my expectation would be is that if Lattimore plays in this game, he'll be on Drake London. Right. So you would think Darnell Mooney and Ray McCloud will get more looks in a game in which the Falcons are going to have to pass. This game is in Atlanta as well, so it'll be in the Dome. And Mooney is somebody that we have seen have success in the NFL. It was in Chicago, and then the offense just kind of went sideways, and just he was hurt a little bit. But in a new system where, again, he's not built to be a number 1 wide receiver, and unfortunately, he sort of became that in Chicago because they didn't have anyone else. But talented kid, and obviously has found a connection with Kirk Cousins.
Yeah, I think the big question coming into the season, who's going to be the second guy in the passing game behind Drake London? Bijan Robinson obviously factors in there as a receiving weapon too, but it seems like it's going to be Darnell Mooney. The stats for the first 3 games are really skewed by that weird first game where Ray McCloud was a huge thing. It was doubling Drake London's targets. I think that's the outlier. Darnell Mooney is the second guy in this offense for now, even above Kyle Pitts.
Yeah, and by the way, I agree with you. They really like Ray McCloud. He's playing a ton of snaps as well. I think in deeper leagues, Ray McCloud's kind of a consideration, but you have to give credit Kyle Pitts because he's a tight end. But yes, if you're looking at pure stats, the idea that Darnell Mooney has a better fantasy season just stats-wise, if you take position out of it, then Kyle Pitts is not crazy at all. I think
it's likely.
I would agree. Yeah, I mean, it's just like, which is sort of insane to think about, given that,
I'm off Kyle Pitts.
I mean, they drafted him like, what was it, 8th overall? Yeah. What was his pick?
Even earlier.
Was it?
To be fair, it looks a lot different. It was Pitts who got mugged in the end zone against Kansas City. So it looks a bit different if he has multiple touchdowns on the season, but he doesn't seem to be as hugely involved as perhaps we hoped.
Yeah. All right, our next one here, guys. Allen Lazard against the Broncos, available in 70% of leagues. Matthew, you made a really interesting point on the last one. You said Drake London could see Marshawn Lattimore. In this game, we know Garrett Wilson will see Patrick Surtain, probably the best corner in all of football. Maybe that helps Lazard's target share in this one.
You know what, Connor? I'm a generous man. I'm a giving guy. And it just doesn't feel right for me to talk up Allen Lazard. I feel like this is something
nothing I love more.
To do. Yes.
Nothing I love more than talking about Allen Lazard. I mean, he's getting a lot of red zone looks right now. The thing that I will continue to be nervous about with buying into Lazard is Mike Williams is getting better week after week after week. And those red zone targets are at least going to be split towards Lazard and Mike Williams going forward. So this might be the last week. I think you could play him in your flex if you're desperate, but I would say the Mike Williams time is coming, and it's coming very soon.
I go the other way. If I'm the Broncos, I put Surtain on Lazard. Can't let Allen Lazard beat you these days. You take your chances.
Just out of embarrassment?
Yeah. If you get beat by Garrett Wilson, what are you going to do? He's great, but you can't get beat by Allen Lazard.
People get fired. If you
It's
get beat by
happened
Allen
quite a
Lazard.
bit this year.
Yeah, absolutely.
Look, Rodgers has the connection with him. I agree. Mike Williams looking better, and he will start coming down with those 50-50 balls in the end zone, the one that he dropped in that game against the Patriots. But, if Williams or Wilson ever misses time, Allen Lazard becomes a serious thing.
He's got an 87% route participation this year. To your point, I mean, he's been out there. Again, part of that is because Mike Williams just isn't up to speed health-wise. But
he looks fine, though. He looked dreadful last year, and he looks completely adequate this year.
And the truth of the matter is that we can make all the Allen Lazard jokes we want, and believe me, we will. This is a guy who was a $40 million healthy scratch last year. But I will say this. But I will say no, and I will say this.
$44 million.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry. I didn't want to. Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. I didn't mean to cheat you out of $4 million.
Sorry, that's a lot of money.
Mr. Lazard and Allen Lazard's agent. But what I will say, Connor, is that I think you could make a very strong argument that the offense coordinator for the New York Jets is Aaron Rodgers. And then,
absolutely.
I mean, right?
I don't have to argue. I'll tell you.
He's the head coach. He's the head coach of the team.
Yeah, I mean,
was the GM a year ago.
Yeah, exactly. And he's also the owner of the Bears. But my point is that if Aaron Rodgers wants Allen Lazard on the field, he's going to be on the field. And so far, that's what's happened. Like, even if Mike Williams is the better player, even if he's healthier, if Aaron Rodgers says, I need Allen Lazard because Allen Lazard's like my best friend, and Allen Lazard knows that when I'm at the line of scrimmage and I just do this, he knows to run a go route or whatever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The mental connection is very real between them. Yeah. We've seen it all 3 games.
He's DeAndre Jordan on the Nets. Like, that's why KD and Jauan get that reference back. You're getting back up to speed on NBA now. It's back on NBC. Yeah. But it's a friend thing. But look, if you're Aaron Rodgers and you're coming off this injury, you're in a new team, new environment, like he clearly has a level of comfort with Alan Lazard.
And Rodgers is one of those guys especially that loves to check out of plays, loves to read the defense, and he's big on like subtle hand signals.
Look at the touchdown. It's just a quick throw, beat the guy in front of you and score. And to credit Lazard, he almost didn't catch the ball, but once he did, he beat the guy in front of him.
1,000%.
So
anyway,
it all worked out.
Alan Lazard is available in 70% of Yahoo leagues, and we think he's viable this week.
Jets a touchdown favorite against the Broncos as it stands right now. Our next wide receiver here, Quentin Johnston against the Chiefs, 55% available. QJ. Another touchdown. The only lingering question is right now, will Justin Herbert play in this game?
That's the problem. I'm probably more bullish on QJ's outlook for the rest of the season as opposed to just this week. Right now, the Chargers are 8.5-point dogs at home against Kansas City, which gives you an indication of, one, question marks over Justin Herbert's availability. X-rays were negative. Team is going to monitor him through the week. But then even if he does play, you suspect that he is going to be pretty limited. But Quentin Johnston, I think, pretty clearly is now the highest upside player in this passing game.
And by the way, in negative game script, I actually don't mind Quentin Johnston this week as well. He's available in 55% of Yahoo leagues. I don't mind him this week, and I certainly like him for the rest of the season. We talked about him a couple of weeks. This was your desperation play from 2 weeks ago when he had the 2 touchdowns. Jay, great call by you. 20% target share so far in the season, 77% catch rate, significantly up from last year where he really struggled with that. And Taylor Heineke has some flaws to his game, but one of the things that Taylor Heineke does have is effort. QJ's down there somewhere. Right. Like he will, especially in a game which they're probably going to be dominated by the Chiefs and they're going to be down a negative game script and have him to throw. Like Taylor Heineke's the kind of guy that will take some deep shots to Quentin Johnston, and junk time still counts. You know what I mean? Yep. Like, take it from me, lost because of stupid Travis Etienne last night. I don't know why he's in the game. You're down 40 with 2 minutes to go, but of course, no, go ahead. Screw me there. The fact of the matter is that we'll get there. But Quentin Johnston, and certainly. He's the number 1 wide receiver on what should be, at worst, a middle-of-the-pack offense. Yep. I get that it's more run-heavy, but, like, the Chargers are going to be good this year. The Chargers are good this year.
Yep.
And so Quentin Johnston.
They're also going to have to throw more than they did the first 2 weeks where they were in positive game script. So, look, last week, Quentin Johnston, like the touchdown, like Matthew, you could have got that touchdown as blown coverage. But the previous week against Carolina, that was very encouraging.
How about some deeper league targets, guys, as we look at Jalen Nailor, available in 89% of leagues against Green Bay. Michael Wilson, who catches passes from ride or die Kyler Murray. He's got the Commanders secondary, so that's an interesting one to keep an eye on. Jalen Tolbert of the Cowboys. That's a Thursday night football game. So if you're interested in adding Tolbert, keep in mind that you'll have to have him ready to play Thursday if you want to take that risk against the Giants. And Tutu Atwell, who did have 5 targets and caught 4 of them for 93 yards. He's got the Bears. He's available in almost every league right now. Cooper Kupp's already been ruled out for week 4.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still holding a torch for Jordan Whittington there, but Atwell, leads the team in receptions and yards over the past 2 weeks. That's Atwell. I really like Jalen Nailor, and this was your desperation call from Sunday. Jay, another great call from you. He scored in all 3 games, and when Jordan Addison has been out, 98% route participation. And I think you could see something with Nailor this year that we saw actually with Addison last year. Last year, Addison was the 3 to KJ Osborne, and I was like, but like you were like, he's better than KJ Osborne, and like it's just a matter of time. And I don't know that I'm not ready to say Nailor is better than Jordan Addison just yet, but given the injuries that has plagued Addison, there's some off-the-field stuff as well. You could certainly see there's a connection forming between Sam Darnold and Jalen Nailor, and this offense seems pass-heavy enough and successful enough that there potentially could be 3 fantasy-relevant pass catchers in this game. We'll see what happens when Hawkinson eventually comes back, Connor, but kind of like Jalen Nailor.
He's looked good, and most importantly, he's catching touchdowns each week, which is really helping him.
And one called back as well. He should have had another one. So you add that, and his stats look even better.
And traditionally, Kevin O'Connell, coming from the McVay tree, like this is a team that usually is at the top of the league in 11 personnel. Yep. That means he's going to be out on the field. So it's good times ahead for Jalen Nailor. To recap Matthew's Week 4 top wide receiver waiver targets, of course, number 1 is Jauan Jennings. Number 2, Romeo Doubs. Keep an eye if Jordan Love is back. Like Jay said, he's expected to be back. We'll see. Darnell Mooney, Alan Lazard, Quentin Johnston, Jalen Nailor at 6 there, Michael Wilson at 7, Jalen Tolbert, Thursday Night Football against the Giants, number 8, and Tutu Atwell, who's got some big playability for the Rams at number 9 as Cooper Kupp remains out.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched. Or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.